Thank you for coming. I'm very proud to announce Yaw Evans. You are a producer, composer, sound maker, and live performer. My perception from what I see you do is that you're using Modular a great deal, and I can see that you're working with Buchla stuff, and I can see that you also work with Eurorack and also with Elektron stuff. And in this talk, I basically want to talk about how you make music and also a bit about how you combine Modular with this other stuff, because I think the whole thing of combining Modular it's not easy necessarily. Can I start with how you got into making music? How did you first get into it? How did it become a profession for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long arc really, but the short version of it was I knew all I wanted to do was make music. I didn't do very well at school, and I wanted to DJ. So I started off being a DJ, and I was like, okay, I want to make tunes, so let me go and make music. How do I do that? I need to go to music college. Yeah. Went to music college and went down this quite narrow road of making music in Logic only. And that's not to say that that's not a fulfilling path, but I'm not very good at making music in a DAW only. I came to learn. So I eventually got myself a Digitakt, and that just like blew my mind to the possibilities of jamming, recording that into Ableton, and suddenly my electronic music became alive.
Can you say, what is it about the Digitakt particularly? Why that over anything else?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've come to learn through how quickly I learned the Octatrack, there's something about that workflow that just clicks in my brain.
Yeah.
I didn't find that big Elektron learning curve that Reddit will tell you about and other places. I just kind of got into it. And that's just sort of been my preferred way of sequencing, my preferred way of sampling outside of Ableton. And I've never really gone back. I've tried Roland, I've tried Korg things.
Yeah.
It's not to knock them, but for me, my workflow just always feels, I get into flow state a lot quicker with the Elektron stuff.
Did you give up the computer as such, or how did you make the Digitakt work with what you already knew?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So nobody really cared about my music when I was in the DAW. I was doing the social media thing of get your phone out, record your speaker, belting out a tune and hoping someone would interact with it. Then I started doing it on a Digitakt and discovered this community of music makers on Instagram. And then they started like being really encouraging of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then started sending me Modular stuff with people with Digitakts.
Oh, no.
And yeah,
no.
It's basically, I was being sold the Modular drug. And this was around the time that people like Annie were really big on Instagram.
Doing beautiful ambient stuff.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my God, like I want that beautiful ambient textural stuff in the background of my Elektron heavy, like UK bass driven beats.
So how did you get into Modular then? What was your route in? Did you just add it to the Digitakt?
I just added it to the Digitakt, yeah.
What did you get?
I got a low-cost Dope case, the single 3U one. I picked up rings because that sounded like Annie. Yeah, of course. That's what else would I do?
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was a great thing. And I got maths because I was like, well, I think I need maths. I'd watched the video from you, so I went and got a VCA.
Thank you.
A Dope for VCA. I got a Dope for LFO, and I picked up Voltage Block.
Yeah.
And I was really confused by Voltage Block. I was like, I don't get this. I had nothing to like clock Voltage Block with.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was kind of like cycling maths to get something to move Voltage Block eventually.
Yeah.
But then that wasn't in time with my Digitakt. So then I had to get a Mutant Brain. And then I was like, okay, now I'm cooking. And then I picked up Plats and I was making basically bass lines. Not much ambient stuff, but Platts bass lines to go along my Digitakt.
So were you were using Mutant Brain to go MIDI out from the Digitakt?
Yeah.
Play compose MIDI on the Digitakt and then let the Modular play it.
Exactly.
And how were you getting, where's that going? How are you integrating Modular and Digitakt?
So I had, and I still do have a UAD Apollo interface. So I was running it into that. And it was quite slow. It's quite start-stop. Like I've written this idea on the Digitakt. I've got a little bit of stuff going on in Ableton. How do I now get this Modular bit in?
Yeah.
But alongside that, the other goal was trying to get my music heard. So I was like recording this for Instagram And effectively, I got stuck in this trap of making like 1 minute long, 30-minute long loops and no music. So then it was the task of how do I make these liked things on Instagram into songs?
And how did you? What was the way?
I tried a lot of different ways. A lot of like, let me record a long pass of said bass line and then try and chop that up. I didn't like that very much. And the way that I still do it to this day is quite methodical. I'll be like, right, I'm going to add some modular drums to an existing drum thing. Now I'm going to work on the bass line. I'm sort of tracking in individual parts.
Okay.
Usually have it on a loop of about 32 bars or 64 bars and sort of
And
add.
just to be clear, is that in a DAW? Is that in like
That
Logic?
is, yeah. So this isn't on at the moment, but yeah, this is Ableton. So all of this is piped into Ableton at all times. And I'm very conscious about pressing record from very early on. I may start over here, or I may start here or start there, but it's being recorded into Ableton.
As a big long sausage.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned it was like 32 bars. Do you start in it? Like, where does it begin? Like on a cold morning, how does a track idea start in this setup?
Often it'll be on the Morphagene. This is sort of going back to my original intention of like, let me create this textural moving thing that is like a bass. And then I build on top of it.
Like a pad or a mood.
Yeah, or a drone even. Like sometimes that, like a fifth above the key that you're writing in, and that's good enough. That's just sort of the thing that's there for you to write around.
Yeah.
So that's a typical start. I like starting the Octatrack, I like starting the Digitakt, but sometimes I'll find something interesting in Ableton and like go quite far down the road in Ableton and be like, I was missing something. Right, let me go to the modular to find that.
What sort of things will you use in Ableton? If you're going to go to that, with all this modular at your disposal, what is it in Ableton that you would start with typically?
At the moment, it's a lot of the Slate and Ash stuff, which is just like...
I was playing with choreographs, which is really nice.
Amazing.
I mean, yeah, it is. And it's very modular. It feels very modular, inspired software. There's in the Slate and Ash, there are literally Platts samples, and then and it's all very sequenceable. I really do. Yeah, I dig what they're doing. That's interesting to hear. And so then, is this all clocked to the? Can you just sort of, how is this? You said it's all going into Ableton, but in what way, I suppose, and in what way does it talk to each other? And we can go and talk about all the individual bits as well.
Yeah. So clock, I haven't really figured out actually. I get a lot of latency here, and it's a pain in the ass. So much so that I've just stopped kind of trying to fix it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I will. Yeah, I do clock, but I haven't got a great like on the grid clock between the Elektron stuff, the Buchla or the Eurorack and Ableton, which I think is probably why I'm so methodical about right now. It's time to record in this one pass.
Yeah.
Then let me like edit it in Ableton and then go and record the next thing in.
Okay.
So there's that sort of shifting on the grid in Ableton to get the hardware recording locked in on the clock. But that said, this will still be running at the same BPM that I have in Ableton.
Yeah.
I'll use PAMS to do the same, Metron to do the same, Hermod, which is actually really close clockwise. And there's a MIDI module here that is actually pretty good clockwise. This is a new addition, the Drop.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm hoping that can be sort of a hybrid bridge between Ableton. I've only had it like a week or two, so I'm still getting my head around it.
So what you're saying is that basically, whilst the Octatrack may not be perfectly in sync, the Octatrack is at the same tempo that you work at in the DAW. So you can kind of compose concepts and ideas that will fit the grid in Ableton when they get in. Because you're right, it is the syncing thing is a problem, and every manufacturer, it seems, say they have a brilliant solution for sync, and I find that your mileage may vary. It isn't always brilliant sync.
Yeah.
So I see. So then, okay. So, and you've also said that sometimes you will start ideas in Ableton, and we will kind of augment them with the modular. Let's talk a bit about your modulars, and maybe we should first talk about Eurorack, because this is kind of a Euroracky show, I think, a little bit that we're at. We're at a live show. But obviously we need to talk about the Buchla thing too. But talk about your Eurorack and maybe a bit of your journey. Obviously, we heard where you began with it. You've obviously gone way beyond it.
Yeah.
What does Eurorack mean to you, and what do you like about it, and what do you perhaps not like about it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because you got this, obviously. So clearly there's something.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many different systems over the last 5 years. And when I think back to some of them, I was trying to maybe recreate a Digitakt in Modular. Like I was trying to do like a whole Groovebox thing and make a 7U Groovebox, drum machine sampling thing. And I don't think I did a great job of it. It became quite expensive. And I was like, hang on, I have a Digitakt, so I have an aux track, and it's kind of got a modular workflow, and I'm getting very similar results. I had fun doing it, but I don't think I loved that. What I love about Eurorack is sequencing. I think there's amazing sequencers.
Like the Metron or the
Metron, the Hermod. I've had the IntelliGel sequencers as well. I really enjoyed those.
Like Metropolis.
Yeah, Metropolis. I've had both of those. I had a lot of fun with those. Hermod I really liked because I got ideas out of the door, like MIDI written in the door could then be played in Eurorack very quickly.
Right.
And then clocking was super easy as well, or as close as it could possibly be. I love the sequences in Eurorack. I do like sampling. I love Morphagene. That has just stayed. I love the filtering.
So why Morphagene? And you said you could literally all start ideas in there as well.
Yeah, I can never get those weird sounds not quite clocked, weird pitch things happening in Ableton or in a DAW. It's when I try, it's such a long and painful process.
Going off grid, it's interesting to hear you say. It's like, I know what you mean, that sense of something that's sort of cloud of sounds, sort of decoupled, and you say that you were kind of looking for a mood, and that isn't something that's necessarily going to live on a grid, is it? It's just something that's just going to float in the ether. And
I love that.
Yeah,
I love where that's slightly off kilter and the rest is more on.
Yeah,
and you got that juxtaposition. It's a big part of what I try and do in my composition. I do a lot of field recordings in the area that I live, and they all make their way onto a reel in the Morphagene. Yeah.
Okay, so Morphagene.
So sampling, but not like Groovebox sampling.
Yeah, I mean, that seems clear to me. It's the same thing, but it's completely opposite to a Digitakt, because a Digitakt is rigid and it's got 8 slots and it's got 16 locations.
Exactly.
That is the opposite.
That is not that. Yeah.
A cloud.
And I really like effects. So there is a clouds module in there.
Yeah.
There's the mimeophone there, and there's effects aid in there, and there's the IntelliGel granular.
Oh heck, multi-grain.
Multi-grain in there, which I really do like. So between all of that and Morphagene and QPass, actually, I can get these weird sort of beds of sound.
Yeah, okay.
And that scratches that itch. The pursuit of drum sounds, I get more from like the Schweiman module here, the VM1S.
I flip, yeah.
And the Matter, the Foltec Matter, which is weird. I still don't really understand it. It's kind of circuit bent, odd percussive sounds. And I've got a WMD Fracture there as well.
How do you sequence these?
So that'll get sequenced from Metron. Sometimes from the Hermod. And I've got an ensemble module, which is by Whimsical Raps. So I don't think it's in this shot. Yeah, it's not in this shot, but I do use the mono stuff like Grid and Norns. So sometimes sequence.
So you will be, and again, to say you'll be tracking drums into Ableton in a separate pass. And quickly, just return to this idea of this is a whole composition environment. It's like, is there a point where you sort of stop touching the modular and you kind of just sit in live in Ableton and actually write the track? How do you arrange? How do you go to the final track having done some recording with this stuff?
It changes every track. It really does. Sometimes I feel like I've broken the back of the track and the idea, and it's all happened in this world I've just explained. And other times I've kind of got to make that idea in Ableton, and then this becomes a place where I go and sort of finesse the idea.
Do you like literally re-record sounds and like replace?
Yeah, sometimes like if I'm on the go, if I'm on a train, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool what I've got going on in Ableton. It'd be a lot cooler if I was back here.
I see you on the train a lot.
Yeah. I got to keep it going, man.
You're that guy from those adverts that's like actually brought a piece of kit on the train. No, it's good.
Kind of determined to make it work on the go, yeah.
What I see, is this the Rossum assimilator?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. How is that?
I do like that. that does do something different to the Digitakt. I mean, it sounds so high res. It's insane.
This is what I've heard. I've heard people say that it sounds sort of incredible for some reason.
Yeah, it's a bit of voodoo in there. Like if you were to sample all of this, like, you know, the Buchla oscillators and the Schweiman oscillators and all that stuff, I feel like you wouldn't know that it was sampled anymore.
Okay.
It's just like that good. So yeah, that's cool. I haven't been using it as much as I probably should of late, but yeah, definitely a cool module.
You're getting pulled in a lot of directions, even with just this setup, I can see.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Let's talk about Buchla. So obviously, I'm not really a Buchla person, and so when I look at a Buchla system, I look at it like a person who doesn't do Eurorack looks at a Eurorack system, and so I sort of have some understanding. And I suppose from a high level, why? You know, why did you feel the need to? Because this is a big investment. Obviously, we know this, and you know, but it's all a big investment. It's what you want to spend money on. But why? Why would you go that route? And what is it doing that you're not getting from? Or because I assume this came later, right?
It became much later. Yeah, it became much later. And
how did you? What was your route in? How do you get into Buchla? Just to open a can of worms for people listening.
Yeah. So
sorry in advance.
It's even. Or I found it even harder to have the sort of sonic examples online of what the Buchla is going to sound like and how it's going to sound like for me. There's even less people
making videos, showing you what this can do.
Yeah, so that was quite tough. But I guess my inspiration for wanting to go down that route was really floating points.
Right. Yeah.
I went to a floating points gig at Printworks, and it was one of those gigs that sort of changes your life, where you're like, sonically, what I'm hearing, I have to get my head around. And that was actually the pursuit. And I was really like happy in the Eurorack world at that point. But I was just like, I just want to know what this is about. Like,
what was it? Can you say or try and quantify the sort of what the sound was that you're responding to?
And now I've picked up a few Buchla modules. I think what I was hearing was the 259E oscillator, which is a wavetable oscillator. At the time I thought, oh, this must be some like analog Buchla magic, but it's purely digital. But it is magic.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what I was hearing. And I was also hearing these envelopes, which are, they're basically, they're very similar to the envelopes on maths. So it's just attack decay. But when you push that attack up, you get these really like weird, like sharp rises. And I was hearing that in his set. And I was hearing the spectral resonator.
Okay.
So as I nervously picked up some of these modules, thought, Jesus Christ,
did you buy this full boat? Is it a boat? What is it called?
It's a boat. Yeah,
it's a boat.
That's
a big boat.
That's the Sky. That's a big boat. It's the Skylab. The Skylab case that they do, which ironically is, I think, the smallest boat they do, or one of the smallest ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I picked up something a bit smaller beforehand, and then once I actually picked up the spectral resonator first, so I had no oscillators. Like, I'm just going to process sounds out of Eurorack, out of the Digitakt, out of Ableton. And I was blown away by it. I was like, okay, this is cool. Right, let me.
And is the spectral resonator just lots of bandpasses with resonance? What can you? I don't know it. How do you sum up what's the magic it does? What does it do?
Yeah, so it can be that. It's 16 individual sort of points which you can spike and dip, and then you've got another side which is another 16, so it's 32 in total. Okay. You can flip between said 16. Via CV, or you can draw in stuff just by, it's all touch sensitive. So you draw in a shape on 16, draw in a shape on another 16, and then modulate between those two. Or you could just make a low pass and a high pass, or a band pass, and modulate between the two. So it's really flexible.
Does it ring, or does it make things sound like chords, or does it? What's the tone of it?
Yeah, it has got its own sound. It's a bit vocodery, I would say. It's not. It doesn't sound like a resonator.
Like I'm thinking of the 4MS spectral multiband resonator as well, which kind of you put stuff in and it sounds very like everything sounds like a glassy chord, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, it doesn't give you big spikes like that. It's got a little bit of emphasis on there. It's great to run breaks through.
Okay,
that's what I'm really enjoying.
What does that sound like?
Yeah, a bit more hollow, but that with some reverb oh man, it's
Okay.
beautiful. It's
Noted.
beautiful. Yeah. I'm really into that thing.
And then, but do you have is this the 259 in the bottom right, or is that, do
Bottom
you
right
have
is
that?
259, yeah.
And how did it deliver the, floating points
And some,
weirdness?
yeah.
Yeah.
And some.
What you said, because you said it, were you hearing kind of saw waves and square waves, but do they sound different? What is the vibe of it? What?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about without a sonic example, really.
Yeah.
But it samples its own firmware, which can sound mental, like really like crunchy, almost percussive, or just outright noise. And then on the other side, it gives you like a wavetable, and you can like flip between the two. So it can become a drum voice really easily, or it can become like an angry, growly, wavetable-y bass line that then, yeah, it's really flexible.
That sounds nuts. Okay.
Mad.
And so
Bonkers.
what does this ensemble do? What do you make? What kind of stuff do you do with this in this setup?
So I'm processing a lot of audio through the spectral resonator, like vocals, breaks, drums, pads, stuff out of my Super 6, stuff out of my Matriarch, stuff out of Ableton. I'm making bass lines and leads from the oscillators. I'm also making drums. This half of it is sort of around modulation. So I'm using that sequencer as a modulation source. That's like a set of LFOs and other envelopes, more envelopes. So all that's modulation. And that in the middle there is effectively my mixer. It's
The
low pass gates.
Yeah. Do you ever blend the two?
I do. So that output is going into that input.
Right.
And that's to send that into effects.
Into clouds.
I don't do that enough.
Oh, right,
I don't know. It's been going into Effects Aid actually.
Okay. Yeah, I love Effects Aid as well.
Yeah, and I think I might have taken out. Oh no, there's an MFX there as well.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I'm using that.
Amazing. So obviously this is you in the studio, but then there's you live. You know, so we should talk about how do you use Modular live. We've got this is the rest of your studio, but let's just sort of skip ahead if I can find the pictures. Oh wait, look, let's see a bit of that. We can't hear it. But try and imagine the best sounding break you've ever heard in your life. Sounds like that.
It definitely sounds like that.
Sounds like that. But here we've got. Talk to me about. I mean, there's so much to ask, but where are we? And talk about your setup. How do you take this live? And oh man, what is it like setting up? The difficulties you must have. You're playing in DJ booths with pro audio equipment. Tell me the story of the whole thing of making this work.
So, I mean, taking my ideas out of the studio into live it's been a constant evolving thing on how much I want to do live, how much I want my music to translate. In this set in particular, I came on after DJ Flight, who was absolutely shedding, like his hands in the air, drinks being thrown in the sky. Like, everyone's going off, and I was just like, fuck, I've got to come and do my thing. Like after this, like, am I going to clear the whole of this beautiful forest stage?
Because literally this is like floor to ceiling or front to back ravers, just like hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah, man. It's like, do they know who they've booked? Like, what am I going to do here? What I did was I sort of remade my music in the Octatrack and Digitakt, and I leaned on the oscillators and the spectral processing that I had in front of me. So I would replace bass lines or leads, and I would jam with those live. So that feels like the amount that I want to do here. Okay. I want to like transition through different tracks, and I know how to do that well on the Elektron stuff. I want to lean into like the modular for my bass lines, and I can mess with ADSRs, and I can, process some audio through my spectral resonator, and I've got a mixer, so I can control the sound. I've got filters on there, and I can send it out to my pedals. And I was like, that's what I can do. But in practice, it was quite nerve-wracking. It's a very expensive setup to be taken on the road. Don't think I'll be doing that again in a hurry.
Where is this? Where are you here?
This is in Rotterdam.
This is not in South London.
No,
there's a body of water. So how did you get this to Rotterdam safely?
So this went in overhead because there's no way I'm going to check it
Absolutely
in.
Correct.
Yeah. I would have sat on it before I put it in the hold. And this all fit in a large rucksack.
Okay, so yeah, you didn't let your gear out of your sight on the plane,
And it was very nerve-wracking, yeah. Like people putting their luggage, forcing that into the overhead, and me just be like, "Oh my god!" Like,
did you pay for priority like boarding or anything?
I should have,
because it sounds trivial, but these are the things that make the difference between them going, "I'm sorry, sir, I'm afraid all of the overhead luggage is full. Let me take your case and put it in the hold. There'll be no charge for us destroying your 20 grand modular. That's free."
yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. So you get to Rotterdam, and how do you how much time do you have to set up? How do you prepare for for the DJ flight is playing? You need to set up. How do you prepare for it?
Yeah, so sound check was very early. Sound check was 11 a.m. and my set was 7 p.m. So yeah, it was setting up and then pleading for tarpaulin and something to cover it, so no one's going to spill drinks on it. The sun's not going to be like beating down on it directly, and that worked really well actually. But what you can't see is there are stacks and stacks of beautiful sound system and subs that were kicking out serious noise. So I started then in my mind worried about the internal of my Buchla and bolts falling out and like
ribbon cables going.
Yeah, just like hang on a minute, like this really wasn't a great idea. But the set went really well in the end. My first track was an ambient track that I built, sort of like 70% in the Elektron stuff, and I could just sort of jam on top from the Buchla, and that like reset the room and kind of got everyone used to the idea that no, this is something completely different to 90s hard metalheads jungle.
I imagine that like 7 p.m. everyone's kind of okay with a bit of a sort of, because that's not that a venue or an event or a festival like this will go on till 3 a.m, of course. So like really peaks after midnight. So you're kind of, that makes a lot of sense. And just to say, so the Octatrack has got that ambient bed in it, right?
Yeah.
And was it sending MIDI to the Buchla, or did you just have sequences? How did you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, it sends MIDI, and the 225E, this module in the middle, is
that the sequencer?
No, this one here.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so it is amazing at receiving MIDI and using CC messages and send them out through the Buchla. And it also has preset management, which is amazing. So I could flick through different preset states, and everything changes on all the modules.
Wait a cotton picking minute.
Yeah, hell yeah.
It's got presets.
Yeah. What? So down here, that little screen at the bottom gives you can name your presets, you can flick through them, and as long as your patch cables are still connected in the same way, you completely change the settings. So that was a lifesaver.
So did you have presets that you knew, and to what extent is this, I suppose, on a big philosophical level, at what extent is there improv and what extent is there preset kind of? What have you worked out beforehand? And really, you mentioned a little bit about it, but it would be good just to sort of clarify is what you give yourself to do in a set. What you're actually doing minute to minute in this.
Yeah, in this set, because I was conscious I was going to be up against so much pre-recorded, mastered music, I wanted to try my best to stand up to that.
Yeah.
So there was quite a lot of stems and processed one-shots to recreate my music within the Octatrack and Digitakt. So I was changing through patterns. I was using the crossfader to introduce like effects on the fly. I was using the mixer as like a dub, sort of live dubbing stuff. I was like, yeah, that feels good. I feel safe doing that. And as I'm going through different presets on the Buchla, moving to a bass line or moving to something that could process audio out of the Digitakt or Octatrack, I was moving these ADSRs really and sort of like creating like rises. I was more focused on tension and release than like I need to sequence live, because what I also soon realized is no one could really see what the hell I was doing. Like everyone's just out for a good time. So I was like, man, I need to try and have a good time in amongst this as well. And I've had sets where I definitely haven't had a good time.
Is that because you're working too hard?
Yeah, I've given myself way too much to do, and I kind of got in my head a little bit like, oh, it's got to be sequenced live, or it's got to be this, or it's got to be that. And I just didn't enjoy it at all. Not least of all for carrying all the expensive gear, but for them being in the moment and sort of like overthinking it all beforehand and in the moment, that I just didn't enjoy it very much. So for this, I wanted dubbing effects, presets to move between different songs, and then I could play with the ADSR,
kind of editing settings.
editing stuff.
But is the Octatrack sequencing the
Yeah,
Buchla? So
yeah.
so you're kind of just changing the sound that it is sequencing, and there is plenty to do, obviously.
Exactly. For two hands, it was plenty.
And then do you have? So then in Octatrack, do you move through scenes? Have you got basically start to finish? You know, if I go through this is about an hour of material. Or,
parts, patterns, and scenes. Yeah. And the Digitakt sort of supports that. So I could like throw in like open hi-hats on the Digitakt, just add in like sequence a bit of light percussion. If I'm like, okay, this needs a little bit of something, I could quickly go in Digitakt and do that. Yeah.
And how was it? You know, how did people receive it? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I felt really good about it in the end. People received it well. You know, I'm not a massive artist, so it's new music to a lot of people on the dance floor, on the forest floor, and people were really like open to it. I was really grateful that the crowds in Rotterdam were just open to me coming on Afterflight.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And sort of accepting whatever it is.
I
think you're responding to also this thing that people don't know who you are, and people have no concept. You mentioned it, that people have no concept of what you're doing is hard or not.
Yeah.
You know, and to them, they probably think you're DJing. You know, they don't even realize it.
I mean, you couldn't blame them. There's like tons of decks next to me. And,
correct. There's just been a DJ there, and especially if you're like 15 rows back. And you're maybe not in your most right state of mind. You're possibly not even cognizant, not even sure what day of the week it is, let alone what's happening on stage. And I suppose from your perspective, you know, having done that, what do you see? What's your like idealized version of this? You know, where we're in a dream world, what would your set be? What would you give yourself to do? What would live performing with Modular and all this other gear, what would it look like?
So I did like a live set and a talk about performing live at DBS Institute a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to move away from this, and I'm going to do more hybrid. I'm going to have Ableton, I'm going to have Push Standalone. I'm going to still have the Octatrack, I'm going to have some Modular. And I had the Roland S1 Tweak synthesizer.
Like the little 101 synth.
I loved that so much. It was such a good set. Had so much fun. There was enough from Ableton that gave like a kind of pre-prepared backbone, and then I could move around the table, flex with the S1, which sounds amazing. The reverb sounds great, the delay sounds great. I had Modular to create the ambient sort of textural sound bed. That's what I set up that rig for. So I could play with Morphagene. I could send stuff to other effects in my Modular, and that became like, really interesting, because I was sending vocals from the Octatrack or vocals from Ableton through the Modular, and like getting into this like really
hybrid.
performative hybrid way of playing. I did that set for about half an hour, and it was really nice. So I think for me going forward, I would like to do more hybrid type sets. I would really enjoy a like freewheeling maybe start where it's totally improvised. I quite like the idea of that, and then like sort of reining it into something more pre-prepared, and then maybe in the middle go a bit more freewheeling. And I think that's where I'm going to go with my next sets. Something that is improv, but then I have something more familiar that I can edit and tweak as I go along, and then go back to like improv, kind of dart in and out.
Like a lot of this gear is not necessarily generative or not by itself. I mean, you can use a Buchla in a very preset way, or you can use it in a generative way. It's good. The same with Ableton. Like people, I think it can be seen as very prescriptive, right? That you go in and you make just so I have these loops. But there are follow actions, and there are generative sequences, and there's max for live, and it can be equally, if not more generative than a Modular. But I suppose it is a bit of a question of like audience perceptions and stuff. And I don't know how you feel about, do you subscribe to that thing that if the performer's having fun, then the audience is having fun? Or how do you think much about that? Like, because I'm not sure how I feel about it. How mindful should I be of what an audience is aware of what we're doing on stage? How much does it matter?
Well, I mean, I'm a DJ first and foremost. So I'm really conscious about the transfer of energy and how a room can feel just through the art of sharing music. That in itself is valid. Just the art of getting out and sharing your music, and people can have transformative moments on a dance floor, just hugging their best mate in that moment, and that's valid. So being part of facilitating that experience is something really meaningful for me.
Yeah.
So I feel on that level, just getting out and sharing your music, there's so much value in that. And then on top of that, it's like, yeah, well, you want to have fun doing that, and hopefully that translates too. And then how much do you want to give yourself to do to the point where you still have fun or don't?
Yeah.
So that's something that I do think about quite a lot.
I suppose then the final question is, do you have any, or one little piece of advice for any kind of, for people in a position like yourself that are thinking of going modular and perhaps trying to integrate, you know, both modular live and in the studio? And it could also be another way of framing this is kind of what advice you would give yourself 5 years ago. You know, if you could meet yourself 5 years ago, having done all of, you've learned what you've learned about this, what would you say to yourself?
That's a good question. So you don't need to make it too complicated. I think definitely my first like 5 or 10 live sets were over complicated, and in actual fact, even complex things start with a basic level, and you sort of build complexity on top of that. And yeah, I was really nervous going out to perform live for the first time because I thought it needed to be this super complex thing and visibly complex for it to have value. And over time, I've learned, no, it doesn't need to be that. If people know your song and they get a little bit of familiarity in there, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that thing, and then you twist it up, and then you do something, you know, spontaneous in the moment, they're enjoying it, you're enjoying it, and that's great. So yeah, I guess my advice would be, yeah, don't overthink it. You can have a version of this that isn't expensive, that isn't all analog, that isn't all modular, and it's still live, it's still performance. Yeah, I think it's that really. I don't want to project or anything, but I know I felt at one point that it had to be analog, it had to be modular. I was sort of trying to flex this modular thing, and I don't think it's really needed.
Yeah,
I don't think it's needed, and it's probably not wanted. Definitely not where I'm being booked for on dance floors after DJ sets.
Because people can't even see what you're doing anyway.
This is it. This is it.
Certain DJ booth positions, they literally cannot see.
They cannot see. And I definitely respect the Susan Chanis of this world.
Yeah.
And people are going out there and doing improv, patch from scratch, live sets. I love it.
Yeah.
I think I would love to do it one day myself. But where I'm being booked to play, I'm in this kind of weird DJ dance floor hybrid area. So, yeah.
Wicked. Yaw Evans, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.